Good morning, everyone. Hey there. Hi and howdy. It's your boy JRG. I'm still trying to figure out my catchphrase for the beginning of these episodes, but we have another episode of Geekdom Underground. Again, it's your boy JRG. I'm here with my partner in crime.
What's going on, everybody? Good morning. My name is Philip Hernandez. I'm COO here at Geekdom, and I'm excited for today's episode.
Stoked.
Today, we have Monty Morgan and Sharon Gutierrez, co-founders of Pretty Simple, a leads tracking app for solopreneurs. A couple other things about these folks: Geekdom members and current participants in our Geekdom Pre-Accelerator, which is a 6-week program. We're in our final week, so we'll get into that a little bit. But today, our story is about y'all as entrepreneurs, your journey, how you got here, all those things. So let's go ahead and kick it off. I'm going to start with Sharon, if you don't mind. Yes. So if you could, tell us a little bit about yourself. What's your story?
What's my story? I mean, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing.
It's a Geekdom Underground.
Exactly. My story, so as an entrepreneur, I never thought I was going to be an entrepreneur. I never set out for it. Like, I was in San Antonio when I was very young. We moved up to Alaska when I was about 6, and I didn't go to school. I was homeschooled, but my mom worked full time. So I just kind of hung out solo, but that's actually how I started building websites. Someone gave us a computer, and so I was 14 building my first websites for local nonprofits, because that's a thing. And then transcribing papers for college students. And so for me, it was always just kind of about the next step. You don't know what you don't know. And so after that, I decided I wanted to graduate high school. So I ordered all the books online, did 22 different courses, just filled out every book, took it to a local homeschool chapter, and I was like, okay, give me a diploma, and they did.
Hey,
so I was like,
right on.
yay.
Go get her.
And so then just worked retail, did that. Then someone told me I should go to college. I was like, why? I don't know anyone who went to college. So I decided I would go. So I just showed up and I was like, I'd like a degree in marketing, please. And so went through that whole process, graduated with honors, moved to Hawaii, became a marketing director for a local nonprofit. And then in that space, started networking and realizing that I had a gift in marketing. Like, I had a strong marketing acumen, and that the whole website thing, that not everyone knew how to do that. So I was always kind of surprised. So that's how I became an entrepreneur. As people started asking me for strategy, they wouldn't have time to actually take my advice. And so they hired me and my team, and I built a marketing agency on accident.
Wow. I love that. Wow, yeah, that's awesome. I mean, you took us all over the place with that journey. San Antonio, Alaska, Hawaii, high school, walking in and getting your degree.
Yeah,
I want a degree now.
Yeah, like, I mean, it's like, that's like that summary piece, but you're just like, no, there's just like a whole lot to it.
Yeah.
But I love it, because it's just always like, what's the next thing?
Yeah. What made you decide to grab a computer and start building websites at such a young age?
Just it was there. It's not like there was a lot else to do. It was Alaska. I wasn't going to school. So, I just started playing around with it, and that's how I, spent my time. That and reading a lot of books. Like, talk about the world's nerdiest kid. Like, that was me.
That was your thing.
A little bit.
How long were you in Alaska?
I was there up until after I finished college.
Wow. So most of your childhood, high school. Wow. Yeah, that's what part of Alaska?
And Fairbanks, so interior. So no, I didn't live in an igloo. I did not ride a polar bear to school. I figured we'll just get that out the way now.
Is that what you get? Do you get like people asking you questions like that?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah, and then people explaining to me how it is. I like that, where they're just like, oh, you guys get money every month for living there, and I'm like, no, that's not how that works. And they're like, oh no, but you do, and I'm like, oh. Thank you. I'm so glad you told me. Thanks for explaining Alaska to me.
Thanks for explaining my life to me. Appreciate you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, for real.
So then at some point, probably before you went to college, you had identified that marketing was your calling, and that's what you wanted to specialize in.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I was in retail. I was good at it. And like I said, college wasn't really a thing. Entrepreneurship was not, I couldn't even comprehend it, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, I did not know speaking was a thing. It was very much just being in that space. I kind of figured, I knew I wanted to do something bigger with my life, but all I could think of was work harder. There was just no other options. I couldn't comprehend it. And so when I had a boss tell me I should think about college, and she was asking what I was interested in, I knew I was good at retail, but I was like, well, who decides like what pictures go up and the promotions and like all of this stuff? I'm like, because this is interesting. This is strategic, and I don't understand who does that. She's like, that's marketing. So I decided that's what I want to do.
Hey.
Right on. Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
So, Monty.
Oh boy.
You got to follow that up.
Yeah, you gotta. Do you have a journey that's similar going to Alaska and Hawaii?
Not at all.
No.
I grew up in
tell us your
South
story.
Texas. For some reason, in the small little town I grew up with, we had a great computer teacher. I learned Visual Basic, and always had kind of an interest in computers. Went to college, did all sorts of different things there, but when I graduated, I ended up sitting down working, doing graphic design for a few different companies, and was just kind of seeing the way the web was going. So I sat down, taught myself, all the different HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Ended up moving to Hawaii because I've been surfing my entire life. And that's where Sharon and I met. We started working together, became friends, and that's how Pretty Simple was born. So,
wow. And so, what small town are you from?
Refugio, Texas.
Refugio. Give me like
About an hour north of Corpus Christi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Right on. Because I was gonna say, like, you're into like, how'd you get into surfing in small town South Texas?
I spent my summers in Port Aransas, and
Gotcha.
just kind of fell into it. One of my cousins had a surfboard, which he gave to me, and I'd been skating since I was young, and then started, I guess, when I was still in high school, like traveling different places down to Mexico to surf, California.
Oh wow!
And
so you got really into it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's a passion of mine. I actually just went surfing this last weekend down in South Padre.
Sick.
Really?
Invite.
Yeah, dude. Man, that's awesome.
Yeah. So when I got out of college, I was just looking for something to do. I'd always wanted to get out of Texas for a while, so I ended up moving to Hawaii. Spent 14 years there. And,
wow.
Yeah. Just
is the surfing different in Hawaii than Port Aransas?
Just a little bit.
Absolutely. It's way easier to paddle out, but it'll eat your lunch if you're not ready, for sure.
Yeah. That's something I've never done. I don't even know that sensation of standing on something while a wave is propelling me.
Man, there's nothing like it.
Wow,
it's the best.
So that seems like real serendipitous that like you moved from small town South Texas, she moved from Alaska into Hawaii, and then y'all just met. I feel like there's a gap in there. So how did that happen?
Actually, it was through networking. So he was part of a networking group, and I was actually overseeing that particular chapter. And so that's how I was building my business. So just going out, like, meeting anyone and everyone that I could, and connecting with different developers, designers, graphic designers, running an agency. And so we met. I don't know what the first impression was of me, but like we connected. And so I was like, okay, website designers. And I looked at his stuff. I was like, oh, he's good. And like, he is that unicorn though, because he's an amazing developer and also has this branding eye that is so, it's just immaculate.
Yeah, that's
beautiful.
An amazing thing to have in someone where it's like, I can build it, but I also know how to make it look nice. And
yeah.
The full package.
And so, and over the years, I've worked with so many different developers, and which I'm so thankful for that. But I loved his work. And so I was like, okay, you will be my number one person. Like, I will use you for as much as I can and give you as much business as I can. And so that's how we kind of connected. And then the friendship, like, just kind of developed over time. It wasn't really till after I left Hawaii, honestly.
Yeah. And when you left Hawaii, where did you go?
Atlanta.
Did you follow?
No.
I
stayed in Hawaii as long as possible.
Really?
Yeah.
And then how did y'all end up back here?
COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, things were really changing for me in Hawaii. I was living in this beautiful spot down by the ocean, and I'd been there for like 8 years, and then the owners who I was friends with decided they were going to sell it. So I was like, I'll never find another place like this. And we started working on Pretty Simple, and we were just like, man, let's move forward with this. And so we decided to move back to Texas and work on this as much as we could.
Yeah. Where did that idea come from? Pretty Simple.
That's Sharon's process that we took and turned it into an app. She had been, refining it for herself and for her clients for years. And, something that really, like, when she taught it to me, like, resonated, because I had been, terrible
Yeah.
at tracking leads. I was the one that's writing, my leads on pieces of paper all over the place and never following up. And so actually, like, right before we started Pretty Simple, she was actually helping me with another progressive web app that I was building for the small town that I lived in Hawaii. It was basically a tourism app that would help tourists, and mainly Japanese tourists, find their way around our town and all the different things to do. And she was in Hawaii helping me launch last March. And then as soon as she's getting on the plane to head back to Atlanta, we start to hear reports about COVID. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's like, oh, a tourism app right before a global pandemic. This is awesome.
Yeah, that's when you need to pivot pretty
Yeah.
hard. Well, yeah, that's awesome. So it was your idea, because you have like a consulting gig on the side, and you still do some of that, right?
Yeah, actually, no, I closed my agency last year. It was almost 10 years in, and I was burnt out. I had just built this thing that everybody, like, a lot of people want to do, and I just realized I wasn't happy. Like, I was so busy, I was so exhausted, and I missed working with people one-on-one. That's where my passion's at. And so I decided to switch gears and just like do consulting full-time, do digital courses full-time. And then I'm like so happy that I did that, because it created the space for us to be able to work on the app. And so that's really exciting. Yeah,
because I was gonna say, I follow you on social media, and I see you like saying this is coming up, or this session is coming up. So you still do it, but in like a more structured way.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome.
So, and I mean, my clients are all over. It's California, Atlanta, Alaska, Hawaii. And so I feel really blessed with that. With COVID, I was able to, I would have been virtual already for years. And so it's pretty set up for that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. So let's talk about Pretty Simple. Right? Like, why is it called Pretty Simple?
Because it's pretty and it's simple.
Hey.
Actually, she's pretty. I'm simple.
and that's what happened.
Yeah, that was kind of, we had used the name just because I kept saying that I want something pretty and I want something simple. When we talked about, he's like, I need a project to code. And I was like, hey, so I wrote out all the wireframing. I was like, here, let's do this. And so we just kind of were calling it Pretty Simple because that's what I wanted. And then it just kind of stuck.
Now you can't think of calling it anything else.
I know, right?
Yeah. So go ahead.
Go ahead.
Let's talk about Pretty Simple. So can you tell me, I know I gave a sentence about it earlier. It's a leads tracking app for solopreneurs, but how do you talk about it?
So really, as a solopreneur, if you don't know what a solopreneur is somebody who's either running their business by themselves or they're managing their sales pipeline on their own, right? So like, even as an agency owner, I operated as a solopreneur. I was managing the operations and the sales pipeline, even though I had a team of 6, right? And so solopreneurs, they face these certain set of challenges because you are doing so much on your own. I think that before, even just a few years ago, there was just kind of this expectation that was kind of the first stage, and you would always grow into this bigger team, and that was always going to be the forward progression. Now I'm seeing more and more people that actually like lived agency life and they scaled back down because they enjoy the lifestyle. There's so much like flexibility and freedom in it, but it is a little bit chaotic. So this is a leads tracking app. CRMs are just too big for us, right? Like, they're bulky, they take too long to set up. Like, we're all a little bit hard to get focused in on things. And so what we need is something that is very simple to use, easy to set up. There's no complicated integrations, and just a way for us to have our leads on the table and get motivated. Like, we need the fun little reminders to say, follow up on your leads, because, I don't like doing sales. I avoid it. Everyone thinks I'm just like, naturally, like, all into it. But no, I'm a huge introvert. It makes me uncomfortable. So anything that I can do to motivate myself to actually follow up with the sales and make money, because that's what we got to do, is what it is. So we created that, and so I'm really excited about it because I get to use it, and I'm my ideal client.
Yeah,
he gets to use it, my clients get to use it.
And
I need it. Like I said, I had little pieces of paper all over my desk, never following up, never remembering, and so constantly it's keeping me on top of those follow-ups, which is what it takes to close. So
and do you see, so obviously you have to see some success after implementing your system, then they start converting some of those leads?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I love those. We already have our reviews in there where it's like, I didn't realize I had $72,000 on the table. Like now I'm ready to go. And to me, that's why I do this. It's because we don't know. We don't realize. We don't really think about it. We think in everything in these little tiny boxes. And oh yeah, there's that guy over there. He said he was interested in something. But once you start actually adding up all those different leads and the potential value, then it's like, oh, I actually got a thing going.
Yeah, because you change the measurable on like what some traditional organizations may look as. Like we may have 30 leads on the table. When you change it up to say you have $75,000 on the table, it hits different.
That'll light a exactly. It's different. That'll light a fire under a lot of people for sure.
Yeah, that's wow. Well, that's really cool. So, so y'all have been in the Geekdom Pre-Accelerator, and I don't think we've talked a lot about our programs here on the podcast, but
really,
yeah, but from a participant's perspective, and y'all can be real with us. Remember, we're on Geekdom Underground.
Yes.
Hey.
So you can tell us, like, what has your experience been like? That's for either one of you.
Go ahead.
It's been amazing. I mean, when we just got here last year, we were looking to find a community. Luckily, we joined Geekdom like the week before the pre-accelerator started. We applied like the weekend we had just, become members.
Yeah, we like so blocked everything off for that whole weekend. I was like, cool, like let's do this real quick. You know how to do a pitch deck?
And so, just all the mentors have been great. It's given us so many ideas about how to market ourselves, finding our category. And I've loved it. How about you, Sharon?
No, it's been an amazing experience for sure. I think that, I go into things not trusting people. I'm going to be open and honest, right?
Yeah, please.
So I remember the first week I was just kind of looking around the room and like, I don't know about this. I called my friends and I was just like, they seem cool. And he was just like, okay, we'll just find like one or two people you connect with and trust those people. And I was like, okay. And I think that, that's a huge shout out to your program director, Leslie, right? Because I was like, okay, I can hone in on her. I know she's cool, and so that built that trust. And again, we look at things very differently. I definitely come in a little bit guarded, right? But then being able to go through that experience, it's really challenged me to hold true to what I believe for the company and the vision. You get all of this feedback and it's amazing. And where you can go in and feel like, oh, I'm younger or I don't have as much experience in this space. It allowed me and challenged me to get really secure and like, but I know this space. I know solopreneurs, probably more than anyone in that room. And so that challenged me, and it's been amazing to go through that. And it's been, the confidence building is everything. It's been amazing.
How long were y'all in San Antonio before you, back in San Antonio before you did the pre-accelerator?
Like 6 months or something, 5 months?
5 months, yeah 5 months.
And how is that, like, both of y'all have moved around to very different places, like going from Texas to Alaska and then to Hawaii, or going from small town Texas to Hawaii. That's really different. So how have you, how's it been reestablishing yourself in these different places?
I think it's been a little easier for me. I've got family still here in Texas.
Gotcha.
Yeah, lots of family. So my brother moved back from Singapore the same time we did. My mom lives, further south, Port Aransas. And so just having that family has been much easier, I think, than Sharon moving into this area and just like, not having as much of a support system besides, me.
I know. I always feel like we could be on like one of those Unlikely Friends shows. Like we, our connection, like our friendship, was built off of work. And then I think ultimately like it became cemented because we have such strong core values as far as like loyalty, and we just balance each other out in a really impressive way. I'm so high energy. I don't know if you've ever taken those like personality tests, but I'm always like the turbulent commander. And that is so true. I'm like, here we go. And then it's just like 2 minutes later, I'm like, I don't know. Actually, I might have a full meltdown, but like, his stable energy. That's what it takes though. You got to be a little crazy in order to like pull something forward. I'm sorry, that's not politically correct. But yeah, it takes a certain level of tenacity to push something forward. And you're doing something that somebody else hasn't done. And so our energies really complement each other. So when, even when my family's like, so you're just like moving in with your coworker? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, we're going to rent a house and hang out and work there and see how this works. And, so it's been an amazing experience. And
was there any, like Pretty Simple is doing really well and y'all are gaining traction. Was there any other ventures that y'all had before Pretty Simple that maybe didn't work out?
Well, at the Kailua.town, the progressive web app I was talking about, COVID just killed that. besides that, I think that's the only other major,
collaboration
thing. Yeah.
that we've done.
Yeah.
Besides just, all of the different clients that she's brought to me to build websites for. So.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Other than your like consulting, have you built anything? Like, have you started any other companies like Pretty Simple or gone as far as Pretty Simple, or is this the one that you've taken the furthest?
This is definitely the one I think that I've taken the furthest as far as like it's being its own entity. I think I've lived, so much of my life, my career, right, has been building other people's businesses. And for me, that's a zone of comfort, right? It's just like, cool, you have this awesome idea. I have this like amazing technical acumen. Like, let's just build this and make it happen. I'm good at sales. I'm good at business development. When it was for myself, that takes a little bit that look in the mirror and say, okay, wait, do I totally can I back myself the way I back somebody else, right?
Yeah.
And so, with my agency, I was really driven by that because of the team. And so I've definitely built off side things like we were talking about earlier. Like I used to have a radio show in Hawaii. Like I actually have a best-selling book on Amazon. I have a podcast. So I've done all these other things. I'm an international motivational speaker. So it's I've checked all these things off the list, on the side, slowly building my resume and my career and my brand. But as far as having this thing that it's its own, little entity and saying, okay, I believe that this is something that can stand on its own and I'm going to push it forward. We're going to push it forward together. It definitely has the biggest potential and the most traction of anything that I've ever done.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. Same here. So, I've kind of realized this pattern with you on, wanting to go get your diploma and just filling it all out and going, yeah. And then same thing with your degree, same thing with, your radio show, writing a book, all those things. What is it that drives you to want to go do these things? And then not only have those ideas to want it, but then go after it and see it all the way through.
There's definitely multiple layers to that. For a long time, I kind of had to uncover that. I think that's part of personal journey or personal development, right? Uncovering those pieces and understanding what are the things that truly drive you. For a long time, it was simply just, I knew I wanted to go forward. And as soon as I could see an opening of somewhere new to go, then I would take that step, because I'm in entrepreneurship. I didn't know that was a thing until someone told me, you could get paid for this. I was like, wait, what?
Hold up.
Yeah, it was a gal, and she owned Kristen Robertson. I remember meeting her networking, and I was working for the nonprofit, and she's like, yeah, I run a business and people pay me to do their social media. I'm like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, you can do this. And so being able to just be open to those steps. But I think more and more, as the years progress and, the projects get bigger, I definitely have connected with the thing that that version of me that didn't have any idea or any big dreams at all. It was just kind of the survival space. And I always think I want to show up for her in a way, because I know there's other kids like that where it's just okay, we just are set on survival. There's not really this dream. And I couldn't find anyone who looked like me that I could aspire to. So I just decided, okay, everyone asks, who's your hero? I'm like, well, I'm going to be my own hero, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just I feel there's a certain sense of it's an honor. It's a duty to be able to show up in that way, because I know it's going to make a difference for somebody. So it's just when I show up, even for a podcast interview, it's not just for me, it's for the other person who might be inspired for that to say, okay, she looks like me. I can do this too. And just know you don't have to have this background. You don't have to have all the support. You don't have to have, I built the support in the community. I'm thankful for that. But a lot of people think oh, well, you had all of these things to help you get started. No, you don't have to have all those things. You just got to be diligent, be a good person, pour into your community and just keep moving forward. That's it.
Yeah.
Boom. I get to see that all the time. It's amazing when she, was getting rid of the agency and was like, I think I want to go full time into coaching, and seeing that pivot, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna write this book, and I'm like watching all of these things unfold, and I'm like, wow, that's inspiring. But let's figure out something we can do together.
That's I think that those are common dreams, right? Where there's a lot of people that say I want to write a book someday, or I want to go and quit what I'm doing now and go do my own thing. But I think what's difficult is starting. So how do you start? When you think of something, how do you know when to stop something else so that you can start something as big as writing a book and then it becoming a bestseller?
I'm very intentional and strategic. I think that's I do have a strong technical side, and I also have that strong intuitive side, right? So it's just letting those two pieces flow together. I think definitely is my zone of genius. It's what makes me unique, is being very intentional about that. So in everything that I do, it's just like, how can I be super efficient in building this one piece that's going to support and sustain me, and again, create the space for me to add that next thing in. I'm never going to add something in that I don't have time for or energy for. I'm going to say no to everything until it's like, okay, this is running so smoothly, now I can add this in. So like with the book, it was like, okay, my coaching business is running well. I have like these courses that are running, that's going good. So I now have the space and energy, like the book comes in. So now I'm going to work on that. And this is the time for that. And then as soon as that's done, it's like, what's the next thing? Okay, now we're going to start this. Like, all right, the space is running for that. So I can let things flow. People they try to do everything at once. And just they have that mentality, and then they see me, oh, you're doing all of these things, I want to do all these things. I'm like, yeah, I did it one at a time though. Like the only difference has been consistency over years of just consistent. When you consistently add one thing at a time versus trying to chase 10 things at once and never completing anything, like that's the only difference.
How do you know when something's complete?
You know it's complete.
Like if we use your book example,
Mhm.
you set out that like you have a lot going on, but you decided you wanted to write a book.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you, like, did you have an idea that I want this book to be a bestseller, and then at that point I'm good?
Yeah.
Or did you have an idea that I just want to write a book cover to cover?
No, for this one, it was definitely, I wanted to write it. And then as soon as I got it done, I was like, okay, this needs to be a bestseller. So it's just going to be, I just kind of decided. So did my research, set it up. And then I was like, all right, now I will have to show up 120% and like make this happen. Now, once you hit that status, it's not like it stays up there forever, right? But it's like, hit it. And I was like, okay, cool, done. And I felt that sense of accomplishment because it's like, I chose a goal that I knew wasn't comfortable, but I knew I could hit it.
Yeah. I feel like I'm making an assumption here,
Okay.
but I feel like you're more of like a ask for forgiveness instead of ask for permission kind of a mentality. Yeah. So how is that being co-founders? Like, how do you process issues?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can definitely answer. No, it's a lot of grace on both sides. I think that we have worked together, and for a long time, we've worked together in a capacity where I was running things. I'm very used to being that very driven, like calling the shots kind of person. But because we have such a deep level, I think respect is really important, and being able to give each other a voice and like, no, okay, you're gonna say this, I know it's probably gonna make me mad. I cool off quickly, understanding like how we process things. He takes longer to process than I do, like that kind of stuff. But and being okay with that. But then at the end of the day, just like a constant check-in of like, okay, is this the best that we can do? And recognizing that even if it feels like, iron against iron, like we come out with something that's strong and amazing together. Like it might not always be the prettiest process, like in that day. Like Wednesdays are usually like a mess, like, as we're perfecting, the pitch practice or whatever. But we know when we walk away saying, okay, we did something amazing, and knowing that we can pretty much just work through anything. We decided that.
And we know each other's strengths. I think that's what's, important, working through all the different, ups and downs.
How do you know each other's strengths?
Just from working together for so long. She, like she said, she loves how I design, develop things, and her marketing skills. I'm just like, you're a genius. So
yeah. Yeah, no, that's awesome. When you came into the pre-accelerator, I remember when y'all came into Geekdom, because we were down here playing ping pong, and it was like, hey, how's it going? I'm Philip. And, I met John, and then like 2 weeks later, y'all were in the pre-accelerator. What challenges have y'all had since you've been here with Pretty Simple?
Oh, the pre-accelerator has really challenged us when it comes to, how each of us sees Pretty Simple, and trying to make that cohesive in how we show it to other people, how we explain it to other people, how people, perceive us. So I think that's been one of the biggest challenges for us. But, like she said, Wednesdays have been kind of crazy because, we're going through all the different steps of the pre-accelerator, and it's been, there's been ups and downs, and, like sometimes we're just like, okay, let's stop. We're going to do a dance party. Just like get rid of some energy and, then get back to it. So
and so for some context, why Wednesdays can be stressful is that's when we have our pre-accelerator meetings, which in the evening, I mean, it takes a lot. Like in the evening, they do pitch practice. All the companies they pitch, and then mentors. There's a wave of mentors all giving feedback.
A wave.
Just
Mentor whiplash.
Yeah, and we both run businesses full time. It's not like we have something we can clock in and out of. Like
Yeah.
we're running businesses, so I mean we're both intentional about our schedules to say, okay, Wednesdays, like I don't even honestly like check my email for my work on Wednesdays. I'm like, I'm gonna be dedicated. Like I know this deserves this amount of energy and respect, and so I'm gonna give it to it. So that means I have to pause the calendar, everything, and so that I can give all of that energy. And then Thursday, like pick back up,
For sure. Now, Monty, you mentioned mentor whiplash.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, it's real. How was it? Like, have you felt that before? Like, how did y'all deal with that? Like, did you know right away, like, what y'all wanted? And let me just take this with a grain of salt. Like, tell me about how you process that.
Well, that's a big thing because how we do process things, Sharon can be like, I'm gonna butt heads. Like, for me, I'm like, okay, I've got to process this over some time, and so I think that did bring up a lot because I said we both have different views of what pretty simple is, and then having somebody nitpick it at everything that we're doing is just like, okay, now I'm seeing things completely different. And we've got to change our pitch to match this. And Sharon's like, no, we don't. No, we know this. I'm like, but this and but this. She's like, no. Let's step back, take a look at this, and make sure that we're still on track with what we believe in. And so I think all the different feedback that you get can be overwhelming. But luckily, she's the true north. That's like, no, we're going to stick with what we really believe in here. And so it's been quite an experience, let me say that.
For sure. What about you, Sharon?
I mean, same thing. I think that we have definitely adjusted a lot. I mean, all these like minor tweaks as far as like how do we present it? How do we talk about it? What information goes into this 5-minute presentation? So I think the conversations have been so powerful, actually. Like you just can't even add value to it because not only have there been people there that were able to give us this perspective in a space that I know nothing about, or I'm learning about right now, but also people who were using the app, the consultants in that group and the PR people who are like, oh yeah, I actually do need this. And then being able to walk us through their experience and like showing us like, okay, this is like, either confirmation or something that we need to adjust in like our UI, that kind of stuff. So I think it's like something to process, and we've definitely we have changed things and like learned so much, and we're like, okay, yes, that's huge. We definitely need to change that. But like I said in the beginning, it's definitely been about like staying true to our vision and staying true to like owning and having the confidence in the space that we own. And just being like, okay, no, I get this, but this is how they're going to use it. This is how they are using it. I know who's using this app, and I know how this goes.
Yeah, it was always really cool to hear mentors say like, "Oh yeah, I downloaded it and I put in my first lead." That's like literally all you have to do, and then I'm using it and it's great. So I would always be in the background like, "Hey, that's awesome."
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that's so cool.
It makes it real.
For sure.
You had said earlier, that you didn't really have somebody to look up to or a hero per se, and so you filled that void yourself. You want to be that. And you want to be that hero for, whether somebody like you, whether it's a little girl who's aspiring to do great things, or if it's somebody who just needs their diploma, or somebody who just got their degree. What is it how do you want them to see you? What is it that you want them to take away from what you're putting out there?
I think just the tenacity and the confidence. That's, I think, probably the number one thing that people comment on is that you're so confident. Confidence is a decision and you back it up with your experience, but it's a decision first, right? Like I'm choosing to show up in full energy, backing up with my core values and all of these things. And then I do the work so that I can back it up and have the experiences. So that's why the roots are so deep, right? Because it's built on real life experience. And so if you can marry those things together and say, okay, she's out there, she's killing it, she's doing the thing, she decided she's going to do something, and she keeps taking step after step, and she's constantly growing, and they can recognize that, okay, I'm going to make the decision to show up with that energy, and then I'm going to put in the work to back it up, then, okay, that makes you unstoppable. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. And Monty, do you feel that?
Being all the time, the energy is it's palpable. It's like it's always there, and it energizes me,
Yeah.
keeps me going. She's, such a big part of my inspiration when it comes to my own business, what we're doing with Pretty Simple. Just like she said, the tenacity is, it's amazing.
Yeah. Did you have anybody that you said that you didn't really have anybody to look up to? Did you have anybody that was pushing you along?
I mean, at different phases, yes. Like I always look at it as there's been so many different like little pieces, like chapters of my life, if you will, and I look at it like that. So I feel like, along the way, along the journey, there's going to be somebody who's able to like push you through the next space. And so for me, there's countless people that were there at different pieces. I have a younger sister, and I think she's one of the people that she's definitely an anchor for me, where, I'm like, okay, from being younger, and, I remember being 16 and saying, okay, you can either live your experiences and let your past like define you, or you make the decision now that this is what you're going to create for yourself. And so, I mean, being on that journey together and knowing that it's like, I'm the oldest of three, and just knowing that this is the example that we're setting, that this is how we're going to walk through life. I think she's been a huge part of that.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting about how you said that confidence is a choice, and it starts with that choice. And I agree with you. I don't think I've ever articulated it that way, but I agree with you there. It's difficult to make that choice.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like there's a lot of, with me anyway, like inner voices that are going against that to like be confident. How do you cope with that?
It's an exercise like everything else. And I mean, the reality is, I'm sorry, but like as a Latina, as a businesswoman, not only is it your inner voices, but you got your outer voices too. I mean, like the things that people have said to me in my experiences, having a social media presence, like it can be downright cruel, and down to every single thing nitpicking and telling you, like people feel very comfortable telling you exactly why they think you can't succeed. And hearing those messages and having it typed out, and somebody took the time to like send you all this stuff, and you're just like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? So you got that on top of your inner voices. I mean, it's just an exercise. You have to process each of those things and decide, okay, if in my head I'm hearing this thing like, oh, you cannot do this, or whatever that like belief is, like keeps coming through, because you can hear it. It's like on repeat, right? You have to process each one and then decide, is this real or is it not real? Because most of the time it's not real, right? And if there is some element that is true, what can I do to work on that? And so as you process those things, I think it starts to kind of clear up a little bit of space. And like sometimes they'll come back, sometimes new ones come in. I mean, life is not this one thing where we just keep working on ourselves and get better, and then we just like hit this point that, oh, everything's worked through. It's life. There's experiences. We're constantly like adding layers on through our day-to-day interactions, right? So I think just being cognizant of that process allows you, once you start tuning in and actually listening, okay, this is what that voice is telling me, like I'm gonna process that, decide if it's true, not, whatever, and then that starts to give you the space to show up and then fill it up with the good things and the good thoughts.
Yeah, that's awesome. Do you ever deal with imposter syndrome?
Every other day, every other minute. I think honestly, it's so often where I have these moments where I'm like, what is my life right now? How did I end up here?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the first time I ever got hired to do a motivational speaking gig. I was so surprised because I did a lot of workshops over the years, and when then I got hired to go to the Bahamas for a conference, and they were like, actually, instead of marketing, can you just like share your story, and you have the energy and it's motivational. And I remember calling my friend, I'm like, but have they heard me talk? Like, I am not the most articulate, eloquent person that's ever spoken. And she's like, okay, did you talk to her on the phone? I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, so obviously she heard you talk. She listened to your reel. And I was like, okay. So I think just deciding to show up once again, you're like, okay, that's going to have to be enough. It worked for some reason. But yeah, definitely imposter syndrome is so real.
Yeah. And you mentioned that you're an introvert, so like that can't be comfortable going up and speaking in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah.
How do you think you were able to do that, knowing that like this isn't where I'm comfortable? I don't necessarily want to just go and stand up in front of a group and just talk, not only like address the crowd, but also talk about probably your most vulnerable moments.
Yeah. I think it goes back to tapping into that why, knowing why I'm showing up and choosing the confidence. Like, again, it's like if I were just to decide just as a job, I don't think that would be enough to power me through those experiences. That's not deep enough, right?
Yeah.
So connecting to that piece, and then also being really okay as an introvert with how much time it takes me to recharge. Like, even having a roommate again, I've lived on my own for a long time. And having somebody and like who can see that, like, okay, my battery gets like it dies, and like I'm very used to people not seeing that. And so when it's like, okay, he hasn't seen me all day, like, text, you good? And I'm like, I just like I need to come back from that space. Like, I gave all of my energy, I showed up 110%, but like I have nothing left, and being able to take that time and kind of recharge.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, with entrepreneurs, like, I feel like sometimes you have to tell them to take a break, like, because entrepreneurs will work and work, and we see it. I mean, we're open 24/7, and there are people here all the time. So I didn't know that y'all live together, but you live together, you work together, you're at Geekdom, and anytime I see y'all at Geekdom, y'all are together. So how do you like make time for not work? Are y'all friends outside of work?
Yeah, absolutely. I try every night to like stop, cook dinner, like tell her, sit down, we're gonna eat. Like, like I said, I went surfing this weekend. I take time to go and do what I love to do. I think even when we're together, we like to go out, have a good time with friends. I think that's been one of the great things about Geekdom. We've found a lot of great people here that we have made friends with, go out with, like. So I think for the most part, like, we have different ways that we come up with our own energy. For me, it's got to be the water, the river. I got to go to the ocean, something to recharge me. That's always been where I get my own energy. For her, she has her own processes. Video games.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's definitely, it's challenging because when I was in Hawaii, she was in Atlanta, we were on the phone constantly. And, sometimes like we'll take a step back, and instead of like hanging out at the house, I'll just call her. And like, we keep away from each other, but still like, we've got to discuss things. And so sometimes it can just be easier to go back to our roots when it comes to just talking on the phone. So, I mean, it's different now that we're together all the time, but I think, we're finding that way that works for us.
Yeah. And so surfing, water, that's your thing.
Yeah.
And you very, very quickly glazed over.
Yeah, we can't just skip over that.
Yeah, let's talk about your Twitch channel. Let's talk about video games.
Oh my gosh.
So that's what you do?
I mean, I do. I mean, I like some first player RPGs though. Like, I mean, my favorites are gonna be like Mass Effect and like Witcher 3 right now, like that kind of stuff where it's like I can't, be online with everybody because it's so inconsistent of when I'm gonna be on there. But I do enjoy my games.
Yeah. So Witcher 3, that's the game that you like to play right now?
Yeah, that's what I'm playing right now.
Before
that was like Dragon Age Inquisition, and before that I was playing all the Tomb Raider reboots.
Really?
Yeah.
So how do you find time to play video games? Do you make time?
Oh, I make time.
Yeah.
Like I have to. I think for me, I'm like totally recovering like workaholic. I still know at the end of the day, I'm gonna outwork anyone in this room. Like, I'm sorry, it's just the truth, right? Yeah. It's like I have that ability to just kind of turn things off and make things happen. But I think recognizing that there's like that maximum point of utility where I'm like, okay, like at this point, I'm not doing my best work. And so it doesn't make any sense for me to keep going. So that's when I'm like, okay, that's when I can switch it over and be like, all right, I'm gonna just, play games for a little bit. Like, he goes on his surf trips and everything. Like, it is a lot, like roommates working together, all this stuff. But we do have those things that recharge us that are very different.
Yeah, I can play video games, but I came up with a rule years ago. I cannot have a console in my house. That's all out.
He doesn't have the discipline. He'll be on there for like ever.
He does have the discipline.
I set a timer.
Yeah, turn it off. Me, I'll be like, another level, this next boss. Like, and so like I cut myself off years ago, and just like, if I want to get things done, I cannot have a console. So her console is in her room, and like I'm not allowed to be on it.
That's awesome.
What console?
I have an Xbox.
Hey,
okay.
Xbox gang, Elijah knows.
Oh wow, wow! Let's hear it in the chat.
I'm
What's
PlayStation all the way.
Oh,
Dang.
placeholders. Okay.
So then we'd have a feud, ongoing feud.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, what advice would you give somebody who, let's go back to right before y'all decided to get into Pretty Simple. So I guess that would be when you're in Hawaii, she was visiting, and then she was getting back on the plane to come over here. It's March 2020, and getting reports of COVID. You're realizing you should probably sunset the work you've been doing.
Yeah, that was the thing. I was like, our work schedules were kind of like up and down just because nobody knew what was going on. And I needed another project. I was stuck in my house. And so, we started talking about it. She had mentioned the idea of taking, her process and turning it into an app the year before. And I was like, hey, what about that? Like, let's try it, see what's going on. And so, we sat down, I started building the MVP, and it just kind of blossomed from there. So it was what we both needed at the time, I think. And once we got the beta test out and had, users, we actually charged them to beta test for us. And we were like, I think we got something here, so let's move forward with it.
Yeah.
I mean, people were willing to pay just to test it out.
Yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
that's awesome.
I know people are like, you can't do that. I'm like, but I can.
Yeah.
No, I can.
And I just did. Yeah.
That's pretty validating.
Yeah.
Yeah. So on that point, because I mean, you're letting go of something you've been working on. You're putting a lot of trust into something that you don't know really how people are going to take it until you did that market research. What advice would you give a solopreneur in that moment?
Whether to let something go.
Sure.
Or like which part?
What advice do you wish you could have told yourself on letting something go, jumping off and starting something fresh, like committing to the person that you've semi worked with, and committing to a partnership and moving forward?
That's such a good question. There's so many different pieces. I mean, I think it would be a matter of like, yeah, you let go of the things like when it's time, when we know, I think like honestly, like gut check, like we know when we need to let something go, whether it's something on our calendar, whether it's people, whether it's a job, whether it's your business, like all of those things, like we know. The longer we hold on to something, in my personal experience, the bigger the repercussion is, because that it's going to end up gone anyways. But it can either be like a gentle, I'm letting this like float out into the ocean or whatever, or it's going to like snap back like a rubber band and smack you in the face, Yeah. So it's just like gut check of like it's time to move on with things. And I mean, evaluate your partner carefully. Like I said, I'm not a big person for partnerships. I actually have like sworn like I'll never do a partnership, but because of the experiences that we had and the ability to understand like working together and working well together, even though it wasn't always easy, but being able to navigate that. I mean, choosing your partner, your co-founder very, very carefully and having that trust, like, trial run some projects together. Like I always say, if you can, try something first that's small, do a workshop together. I don't know, like do something that's like not long-term, not committal, and just see what the process is. Like, don't just meet somebody and jump into bed together. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, It's not healthy. It's, you don't know, things get uncovered under stress. So do something a little stressful and see what comes up first.
Yeah.
It's good advice.
Yeah. That's a great tip.
And then trust. I think that when you have the ideas, I think you have to make sure you're solving a problem that's like a real problem. I think I hear a lot of people are like, I want to create an app. What should I do? Like, I don't know, go fix a problem. You know what I mean? So It's just like, make sure that, you're in it for that reason. You're solving something versus just trying to make up a solution, And so I think people think like, oh, there's good money, or, I hear that, oh, you get recurring revenue. Like, that's what I want. I'm like, okay, seriously? Like, you don't understand how much work goes into this.
Yeah.
It's just not one of those things that you just like set up for one day and magic happens, it's a lot of work, as you guys know. So, I mean, that's the advice, but it's just like, but if it passes all those tests, then do it.
Right on.
Begin.
Thank you.
Begin.
Yeah, just start.
Yeah, just start it.
Yeah. Just start it.
Yeah.
That's a lot easier said than done. Because I mean, to just start it, you got to stop a lot of other things. And I mean, that's something that I kind of wanted to get into also. Like, you got a lot going on. We've talked about that a lot of these projects. How do you make sure that the things that like right now, you said both of y'all have businesses that you're running. You're also building Pretty Simple. You also have your boot camps that are recurring. So how do you give so much love to something and other things not suffer, like they continue on?
You answer that
It's a
first.
challenge. I mean, every single project that you take on while working on something like this, like it takes all of your time. So I mean, weekends, nights, I mean, it can be challenging, but when you're building something you believe in, I mean, it kind of, you either do it or you don't. Like, that's the thing, is like, if you want something to succeed, you've got to, put your heart and soul in it.
Yeah.
Then I have, this force to be reckoned with. Sharon is just like, always there, like, what's the next step? How are we going to get through this? And I mean, for me, that's what I need. She's been amazing to keep me on track with not only Pretty Simple, but with my own business. So she forced to be reckoned with.
Yeah. So let's give some Geekdom Underground realness, because I think that people see the glamorous parts of being an entrepreneur. It's real easy to go to like Gary V's Instagram and be like, I want to be that guy, but how many hours do you think that you work a week?
Ooh. I mean, we can count those up for sure, but I will say I love that saying about like entrepreneurship. It's like the only time that you'll give up 40 hours a week so you can go and be free to work 80. It's really true.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. I mean, you have to be committed to the lifestyle you work. I mean, I don't know. I think it's like there's sprints. For me, I really do break it into it. It's like I have to make sure that my life is a cadence I can keep and be healthy and happy, right? And be able to do my best. There's times that there's going to be these blocks of time, like when you're going through a pre-accelerator that you had already set to launch this program at the same time, like those things happen, and you just like pop it into low gear and say, okay, like this is going to be 2 months and it's going to be a little bit different. So there's going to be other things that have to come off the plate. Like, my poor friends where I'm just like, I'll talk to you guys later. I'll talk to you guys in August. It'll be great. But, it's just like, that's just anything extra. Like I had to like step back from some like volunteer stuff and things like that, where it's just like, okay, like I don't have that extra space right now, but I'll be back. It's not serious, but making sure that I clean up my plate so that I can actually take care of things first.
Yeah. That's so important to have that kind of awareness, and also have the friends that understand that stuff.
Oh yeah. Really quickly to touch on what you said though, as far as like the real talk though, I think that mental health is something that should be discussed in the entrepreneur community. I think it's really important. I've struggled with complex PTSD, depression, and anxiety. Those are things that are all, like work with professionals and all of those things. They're not like readily visible per se, but I think that there are certain attributes that can contribute to mental health issues, such as isolation and stress. And that is the recipe for being an entrepreneur, right? Is isolation and stress.
Yeah.
And so I think those things, we need to not have them be taboo, not have them take away from anybody's credibility, but start making sure that people have access, and are comfortable to reach out to their friends for support when they need it, and to also like, get help when they need it. And so I think that's an important part of like the work that we do.
I think one of my biggest roles is making sure that she eats and sleeps well.
Yeah. Y'all support each other really well. And I think that you're absolutely right. That's a very important thing that we should be talking about. And what's hard is you don't know how to talk about it.
I know. I mean, it's like I just said it, and I'm like secretly like so uncomfortable. I'm like, I'm totally gonna hate myself in like 10 minutes. Yay! But I've been challenging myself in that space, because I'm just like, no. Again, it's like I know it needs to be said. Somebody needs to hear it, so I'm gonna start saying it, even if it does somehow hurt anything that I'm doing, because I think it's that important.
Yeah. How do you manage it today?
I mean, like I said, with like help and like having those boundaries, choosing to there's obviously lots of things like exercise and stuff like that, consistency, routine, but a really amazing friend group and having the support, I think is all parts of just being the healthiest version of you.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you brought it up, because it's something that should be top of mind for all of our entrepreneurs. And I, honestly, like, that's what I love about the place that we're in right now, is just that like we do have that community, because I think I've spoken to y'all at 9 a.m. and at 8 p.m. and with the same energy. And I love that we have the support of the community around us, because I mean, now that you put it out there and said it and on the podcast, on the table, like hopefully people will start talking about it a little bit more. I mean, hopefully they'll come talk to you about it and just absolutely.
I mean, and this is a community where we can like support each other through that. I mean, I think that coming out of COVID too, everyone imagines that it's just going to be like this. I mean, you know, coming out of it as much as we are, but like it's going to be this snapback of like, okay, everything's open, it's magical. But I mean, there's this phenomenon in Alaska though, actually, where it's like, you know, in Alaska, half the year is dark, right? So it's like, you know, you get diminishing amounts of sunlight over the months until you're pretty much like in night all the time. And then it gradually gets more and more light every single day as it heads towards the summer. So you get into the springtime, it's March and it's all bright and shiny and everything, but the depression and the suicide rate actually spikes. And that's because people have gone through this extended period of darkness. It's light now, and there's so much guilt around I should be okay because it's summertime, I should be happy, and nothing's caught up yet chemically. And so it just causes people to crash. And so I think it's something I'm hyper aware. I work with a lot of solopreneurs very intimately. And so, you know, hearing like the struggle of like, okay, well, like I'm trying to get out there more, but it's actually I'm exhausted and it's overwhelming, like all of those things. In communities like this, it's so important that people get plugged in and also just like, you know, have each other to lean on for support and have that conversation. Like, John, like, you know what? I've been a little bit under the weather, you know, like, okay, cool. What can I do for you? Who can I direct you to? Like, what do you need? You know,
yeah,
be
for
there
sure.
for each other.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Also, I feel like I have those conversations with Philip often, you know, just check in and let him know like how I'm feeling about things and vice versa. So it's good to have someone, you know, to talk about that stuff with, and a community that can support you for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's such an interesting comparison. How, you know, you've had a period of darkness and the sun comes back out, but it might take us a little bit to catch up.
I know, right? And just so anyone knows, like I'm totally gonna have like a vulnerability hangover after this.
Yeah.
Like, oh my god, what I was like thinking.
so don't reach out for maybe a couple days.
Yeah, right. Give me that 20 minutes. No, but I always appreciate. I feel like every time you show up and like, there's always a message, right? Whatever the message is, like I just gotta get the message out there. And so I always appreciate a comment saying, "Oh, like thank you for this or that or whatever." Like if it helps somebody, like feel free to let me know. That will help me remember that a little quicker.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, we've even talked about. I don't know that I've articulated it in a way like you just did, but we've even talked about like. I mean, our staff went through a time where there was nobody here, and that's weird. For y'all being at Geekdom, you see how it is, the vibe, the energy, and you pick up on everybody's energy. You know what I mean? And so, like, we went through a time where it was just dark. There was nobody here because nobody could come. You know what I mean? And so
crickets.
Yeah, crickets. Like even they were gone. But as people have started to come back. You know, we've even made comments to each other that like we're trying to remember how to people again and how to like just be social again. And I think that's part of it is that like, you know, we need to also be aware and reflect that we went through some stuff and we got to give each other the grace and space to get back out of it.
Absolutely.
I love that.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, thank you both so much for sharing. It was so cool to hear your story personally and hear how Pretty Simple came to be. And I think that this does accomplish what you want to, you know, show people that we can do this. Like other people do this. And if you have an idea or a company you want to take to the next level, you just got to get after it. Just got to start. Just got to start.
Thank you for having us. This
this has been amazing.
Yeah, right on. Mr. JRG, why don't you take us home, sir?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you again to Pretty Simple for being on this episode of Geekdom Underground. We had a blast. How can people find you on social media, website?
Yeah, you can find us at Pretty Simple app on Instagram, or you can find me at Sharon Gutierrez.
You can find us at prettysimple.app, our website. Check it out.
Awesome. Well, hey, we'll see y'all next week. We'll be talking with Belinda Medellin.
Oh,
and
My Village.
Be My Village. Hey. Also, tune in Thursday, Venus and Legacy Park. You're going to see some great pitches and a great show. So we'll see y'all there. Have a great day, y'all.